talk title is just a suggestion. Not always. I just speak it. So I changed it to a Dharma talk, an integrated heart and mind. Because I'm also talking a lot about what it means to give a Dharma talk. Can't see now.
Lift the mic up a little bit, please.
Really? There we go. How's that?
Beautiful.
Helps me down here too. From Anne Reed. And I think this quote is always read at least once, if not twice, every Buddha festival. Buddha gave to man mind realization and self-realization. Jesus gave to man God realization. Through God realization, man achieves being rather than ego. The path of Buddha and the path of Jesus are both essential pathways to the Asi Dharma, or the real. Both may be simultaneously realizable when one begins to move beyond the secular religious investments represented. Both may be simultaneously realizable when one begins to move beyond the secular religious vestments representing Buddha and Jesus. Jesus is the door, Buddha the path to the door. And from the Gospel of St. John, I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out and find pastures. Buddhists give lots of talks. They call their talks Dharma talks. This is because what they are doing is talking about the Dharma. In Niscience, we also give lots of Dharma talks. Even if we don't call them that very often, that's what we're doing. We're talking about our Dharma. We all do our best to always give a Dharma talk when we speak. And if you start to think about it, and all the talks we've heard over the many, many years, in some ways, all Dharma talks at their deepest level are really kind of saying the same thing, because they're all coming from the same base or root. And then as they open up and come into Maya and into consciousness, they split into all of their parts and all their virtues and then they become this very large, broad thing. But if you follow it down at their heart, the beating heart of each talk really is that we are all one, that God is one. So sort of, I guess, with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek and humor, it sometimes makes me wonder, why do we keep talking so much? Well, because we need to keep giving our Dharma talks, because we really don't get it at its deepest root, do we? So we have to talk about all those pieces and drill down and open them up. And as we do that, things do open up and we start to get it more and more. And as we start to break through in bits and pieces, we start to become what Buddhists call awake. We become more aware of what is the real. We love our Dharma talks because a good Dharma talk leads to inspirations, realizations, and revelations. From Jonathan, the Dharma is an unceasing flow of sacred truths that continually presses upon the hearts and minds of persons throughout the world. Gradually, the Dharma finds receptive hearts and minds through which to manifest holy instruction, to heal races, nations, and continents, and to keep the human spirit ever attuned to the will of God, creating the universe. At first glance, it might appear, especially Buddhist Dharma talks, are all mind. But in reality, the foundation for any Dharma talk is always compassion, which works first through the heart, and the mind comes second. But heart and mind do work together in an integrated manner. Heart feeds mind feeds heart, and they should be circulating and moving. If you stay up here, you only have half the flow, if that. If you're down here, you only have half the flow or less. It's when they work together in an integrated manner that one truly can open things up and can give a true Dharma talk. Because the base of everything is the heart, is compassion. This is a mantra by Anne Ree. Please repeat. I prepare each day for the bridegroom and for the wedding of my heart and mind, my body and works, my soul and spirit. Something to think about, which I did not open up in this talk, so I'm leaving it to you as sort of a homework assignment, right? Which you'll either forget as soon as we leave here, or some of you might think about, or you'll be reminded of something that will come up later. But I think it is interesting, and I have done this off and on for many, many decades. How do your thoughts feel? And how do your feelings think? And do you feel your thoughts and ideas? Giving a Dharma talk. It is estimated Jesus walked over 3,000 miles in the 3 years of his ministry when he was teaching and healing as he went. From the Gospel of Matthew, and Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. While traditional Christians see this simply as spreading the word or the good news, we know he wasn't just spreading the word, he was also spreading the Dharma. A truly inspired word, there is no difference between Dharma and the word, though there can be word without Dharma in many even religious settings. All true teachers are a living embodiment of the Dharma. The Dharma simply emanates from them filling every thought, word, and actions. This is because of their great love and compassion, and because they do have an integrated heart and mind. So everything is guided by that and has every aspect of what it means to be and to live the spiritual life. Buddhists, especially Zen Buddhists, love to tell stories of how someone came in and simply watched their teacher arranging flowers or straightening and cleaning and setting up the altar, and suddenly sort of, achieving enlightenment, or at least becoming more awake, or having a major realization by simply watching what the teacher does. And that's because their very being is the Dharma. From Anne Ree, love is the door to the universe, the key to the cosmos. It is the door opening all worlds, all systems. Love is especially at home in the human heart, but it is greater than that when it is enlarged into space and becomes a vehicle through which we become channels for God as creators in this world. A Buddhist would say the truth is the direct knowing and perception of that truth. And as important as Dharma talks are, it is even more important to realize that typically, and I've talked about this before, the real truth is sort of what goes on almost before one speaks, in the sort of pause of the words between one speaks, and the pause right after one speaks. Because that's what's carrying the true inner essence and tone. The words are but a carrier, a vehicle for that knowing that is there. And that's what's trying to be communicated. And the words carry that to your consciousness. In the spaces between our words is our real spirit and our knowing, and especially our integrated heart and mind. There are so many dimensions to any experience or to any truly inspired word. And we've talked about how, one sentence of Anne Ree could be easily opened up into a whole talk without much effort. A lot of times, too, within these talks, though, things often are not always direct. They're left in a way that the hearer can hear what they can hear. And this is often important in a Dharma talk because each person has to be free to explore what's being opened up for them, that they can then come to an understanding, make it their own, and and then take the next step. It makes me realize that what is true often can get lost if one is too direct. And this kind of thing is a common theme in Buddhism. Not quite said in those words, but for example, or the following are a couple of just examples. These are not talks, but an excellent example is certain words, especially Sanskrit words. An excellent example of this is the Sanskrit word Tathagata or Tathagata. People say it differently. Tathagata literally means one who has thus come and one who has thus gone. That's a lot for one word, right? But those concepts are in there in the Sanskrit. But in English, typically it gets translated as someone who is neither coming and retranslated as neither going nor coming. And then that gets interpreted as someone who is always present and beyond duality. However, if one were to say always present, you kind of just think of present. But by thinking of someone who is always coming and going, you get the more dynamic aspect of that concept and what's trying to be communicated. And at first glance, yes, it doesn't make necessarily a whole lot of sense. But it's one of those things in the tension that opens up your mind. And as you start to explore it, things get magnified. Another excellent example are the paradox of cones and the juxtaposition of lines in a haiku. Both can point to a different truth, which the listener must come to on their own. One can give a whole talk in a single haiku. Or alternatively, we could say in one haiku, just like one sentence from Anne Ree, we could probably open up a whole talk. You have to pull the strings of what does that mean and watch it unravel. Of course, when we do that, we also unravel its beauty and its aha moment. So an example of this is from a famous haiku master, Kobayashi Isa. He is from the 18th century, so late 1700s. A world of dew, and within every dewdrop, a world of struggle. Now, if you think of looking at grass early in the morning when the dew is on there and you see all the dew on the grass, you think there's any struggle? That's not your first reaction, but now what a good haiku does is it pulls at you and makes you think, what does that mean? What's going on? And what's he really trying to say? And it makes you open up, and that's how you learn. And these are all aspects of what a Dharma talk can do. A real spiritual teacher, such as we had the grace to experience, rearranges your mind and your emotions. But to do that, the teacher needs something to work with. Why was it that some people could come? In fact, everyone here had this, or we wouldn't be here, right? Suddenly hear what was being said and go, wow, there's something here. This is different. This is something I need to hear more of. And yet there were many people who came and just walked away. They couldn't hear it. And we often just say they're not ready, and that's certainly true. But upon contemplation, I think, in my understanding, this goes back to this concept of an integrated heart and mind. To really walk the spiritual path, one must have, to some degree, an integrated heart and mind. They've got to work together. If you think about it, scientists tend to be all mind, all analytical. Very few are religious, or most are atheists, and many are agnostics. Very small percent actually have some sense of the divine because they're all mind. So the student must come with at least something there that's starting to work together, work between heart and mind, that then the teacher can come and then those words fall in that, and then they can feed it and grow it and make it stronger. And then that builds it so you have more and more a greater integration, which is why then as we grow, that's what we're manifesting. From Henri, I met my teacher and my soul knew. My wayward ways, hurting and angering, had fed me with futility. At last the sitting down by the stream of consciousness came. I began to be fed with the fruits of blessed joy. On karma and initiation, Henri, karma is justice. The Zen monk, Zen Buddhist teacher, Jakusho Kwang, says that everything that happens in your life has its intrinsic value. Henri and Jonathan, in sort of different words, taught the exact same thing. Whatever we're presented with is what we need to learn. So Buddhists understand this very well also. And as we all know, God can be very generous. He will give you all the suffering you can take until you are all filled up. It does seem that this is the only way we stubborn humans can come to know what we must do and what we must become. This is from one of the sayings of Gautama Buddha. Imagine that every person in the world is enlightened but you. Everybody's enlightened. They are all your teachers, each doing just the right things to help you learn. Perfect patience, perfect wisdom, perfect compassion. So that's all those people that you want to call names and irritate the dickens out of you. They are our teachers. No, I have not learned that one very well yet, but I'm working on it. Whenever something happens in our lives, we must look behind the curtain, behind the veil of Maya, to get to the underlying reality. I think the major problem in this world is that so few people ever pay attention to what is going on in the background or behind the curtain. They don't even think to look. They don't think there is any curtain or anything behind the curtain. But what is going on in the background behind the curtain is either the truth or so much more closer to the real truth than whatever goes on in the foreground. Again, from Kwang, this is from Kwang Roshi, another Zen Buddhist teacher. There is always something in the background that supports what's occurring in the foreground. Again, we know this. This is also something that is inherent in our Niscience, our teachers have taught us. It's just showing that these are fundamental basic truths, that there are other parts of the world of those who truly seek to dig deeper, who understand these things too. They have a slightly different way of looking at it. And sometimes that makes me better understand and more deeply understand what our teachers have taught. Whatever happens in our lives is an aspect of the real. It is God coming to visit, knocking on our door, saying, saying hello. I have an important message for you. If we run away, what does that say about us? It says we do not really love God. We do not really believe in the perfection of God. We love the fantasy God in our minds. The fantasy God is nice and comfortable because it fits nice and neat into our lives. God is not always nice and neat. God is real. God is in the moment. And God is telling us what we need to learn this moment right now. God is always trying to say, wake up. And for those who are trying to walk the spiritual path, he's right there saying it all the time, louder and louder. Because he knows if we try, we can hear it. And the only way we can truly face a major initiation, maintain our joy, is with an integrated heart and mind. It cannot be approached with one or the other. It must be dealt with both. This enables us to accept and maintain our joy and maintain the compassion within our heart, to desire to use an initiation to bless and heal others. While not spoken of exactly in this way, in Buddhism, an integrated heart and mind is a fundamental requirement for one to cultivate, to make progress and ultimately reach enlightenment. Depending upon the sect of Buddhism, there are 2 pillars or 3 pillars, sometimes more. There's a lot of differences of opinion, but I think they're all getting at the main essence and the main message. They just kind of get there differently. And you're going to see that even more complicated in a minute. But the 2 main pillars I would just like to call out, and these could actually turn in, are everybody agrees that 2 of those pillars, if there's only 2, these are the 2, and if there's more than 2, these are always in there. Compassion and wisdom, heart and mind. Both of these must be mastered. Most of this brought together. It turns out, well, compassion is a major theme throughout all of Buddhism. There are a few Buddhas who are especially associated with world compassion. And I would just like to briefly talk about those in a second. But before we begin, to get back to how confusing Buddhism can be, we must remember that Buddhism started around 500 BC. And it spread verbally across different cultures and different Buddhist sects before most instruction was ever really written down. And many passages or sayings were, let us say, creatively translated, from what I can figure. I think it's because Buddhists cared less about a date or a concrete, worldly fact. They cared more about the spirit of the instruction. And they wanted whatever was originally in Sanskrit or in the Tibetan language, as it started to be transferred, to transfer properly into the new culture. So they would rearrange the stories, the words, certain things as it penetrated in, because they wanted the people coming to become Buddhists to hear the real message. So they didn't care about some of these more practical things the Western mind obsesses over. So I had a lot more in here, but I cut it way down because you're not going to remember it anyway. And I just want to hit the main theme of the sort of the thing I'd like to hit. And that is, there are a couple of Buddhas who especially seem to have a very strong universal focus on compassion. And in some ways, not in the sense of being a savior, but in the sense of their compassion, their care for the world, and for the masses to actually be sort of praying to them, more the way we do in Christianity, is part of that part of Buddhism. Now, this primarily only occurs in the Mahayana sect, which doesn't matter unless you want to read into it. So there are 3 primary Buddhas or names of Buddhas who the vast majority of Buddhists turn to for intercession. In Sanskrit, and I can't say this one very well, I even played it and tried to figure out how to say it, and I can't do it. But it's something like Avalokitesvara, something like that. So that's the Sanskrit name. And it means the Lord who looks down, meaning it's a Buddha who's looking down upon the earth, and in essence, interceding. He's first mentioned in the Lotus Sutra, which was written somewhere around 0 AD, the time of the birth of Christ, plus or minus 100 years. We don't really know, but it's somewhere in that time period. Now in Tibet, and he is seen as directly related to Buddha A, there is Chenrezig. And in China, we all know and have known the name Kuan Yin, a female Buddhist. Both of them appear in sutras written in the 5th century AD. What is not clear the more you read is whether Buddha A, Kuan Yin, and Chenrezig are different incarnations of the same Buddha, or description of a person that as the stories traveled and the instruction traveled, morphed in translation into different persons with names. What is known is they have a very large following, and that their total focus, or their primary focus, is on compassion and mediating for all humanity. Chenrezig is the patron Buddha of Tibet. And also, it turns out, it is believed by Tibetan Buddhists that the Dalai Lama is considered a reincarnation of Chenrezig. The name Chenrezig is interpreted as one who looks with unwavering eye. So they're looking straight at the pain and suffering in the world, and they're bringing it into their compassion. He listens to the prayers of all sentient beings in times of challenge and difficulty. Kuan Yin is similar, but a little bit different. She's from, because you should know, is from China. Kuan Yin is interpreted literally as she who looks down upon sound. This is typically interpreted as she who looks down upon the cries of those who need help. Slightly different emphasis, same idea. Now, where I'm going with this, and why I even sort of started to pull this apart, is that Tibetans believe that Chenrezig is the one who gave them the mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum is one of the mantras that is the most widely said and repeated in the East. Eastern Buddhists, Chinese Buddhists, Tibetan Buddhists, in fact, it is their main mantra. Taoists picked it up. It's kind of spread and got legs everywhere. Both Chenrezig and Kuan Yin, Buddhas of great compassion, are the Buddhas most closely associated with this mantra. I found it very interesting Thursday night when Anne-Marie opens up the very first Buddha festival, which was in 75, 78, 75, I think. And it was in the mid to late 70s. She opens up with Om Mani Padme Hum. Right? I remember when that mantra was a little more, I don't know, in the air. I think we did it a little more. So I somehow was much more aware of it. And as we know, there are so many mantras and so many, this kind of things come to the front burner and the back burner, and things kind of rotate and move around. But there was a time when there was a greater focus on that in Niscience, not a huge one, but at least some. In Tibetan Buddhism, Om Mani Padme Hum is the most ubiquitous mantra and the most popular form of religious practice. It is written on flags that hang off of people's houses and in the streets. It is written on stones on the side of the road. It is written into the side, chiseled into the sides of cliffs and on mountains. So when you're walking, you can look up and see it and remember to repeat this mantra. If any of you remember, a lot of times when they show Tibetan Buddhists, they have like a little prayer wheel and they're kind of spinning it. Guess what's written on that? Om Mani Padme Hum, almost all the time. This is their mantra. From Jonathan, from the sages of India and Tibet have come the words Om Mani Padme Hum, an inspired parable and prayer relating to the jewel of the lotus. For thousands of years, this sacred chant has been spoken and sung by enlightened personages and by those desiring enlightenment. One interpretation of Om Mani Padme Hum is Hail to the jewel in the lotus. The word Om links man with the divine essence within the universe. Mani means jewel, Padme in the lotus of the heart. Hum is the equivalent to Aum, and usually occurs at the end of a mantra. It also correlates to the throat chakra, from which comes forth the gift of speech. So you can see this is a mantra that touches many things. In my reading, I learned, though, most Buddhists focus less on the meaning of the mantra when you interpret it, and more on the symbolic meaning of each of the 6 syllables when they recite Om Mani Padme Hum. So they break it into Om. Well, Jonathan started to do that mostly. Om Mani Padme Hum. I think that's 6. Well, no, anyway, there's 6. Here, and this is the interpretation. Now, this is from the Dalai Lama. All right. I'm sure, just in case you all don't remember this, the Dalai Lama is from Tibet. So he comes out of this tradition. The Dalai Lama once in a talk said, and I think it was turned into an article for a magazine or something, it is very good to recite the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. They say hung. I think we can't quite make the sound they actually do because it's a different language, but same thing. But while you are doing it, you should be thinking on its meaning, for the meaning of the 6 syllables is great and vast. 1. The first Om symbolizes the practitioner's impure body, speech, and mind. It also symbolizes the pure, exalted body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. 2. The path of the middle way is indicated by the next 4 syllables. Mani means jewel, symbolizes the factors of method, the altruistic intention to become enlightened, compassion, and love. The 2 syllables Padme, meaning lotus, symbolize wisdom. Purity, for purity must be achieved by an indivisible unity of method and wisdom, symbolized by the final syllable hum, which indicates indivisibility. These have overlap with the sort of the Niscience interpretation. They're a little different, but that's very common in anything that comes out of Buddhism and Sanskrit. There's often these different sort of interpretations of these things. And I think that's part of what gives them their depth and their lasting power. Henry said to think through the heart and feel through the mind. This means one has an integrated heart and mind. To grow, one must have a passion for their spiritual life, a desire. We need a right desiring to grow. A talk should always reflect an integrated heart and mind. A person with an integrated heart and mind has a passion to knock on Jesus as the door. When we speak, I said a little bit of this a few nights ago. When we speak, or a few weeks ago, when we speak a mantra or mantram, especially one like Jesus, 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 we should yearn deeply in our heart for Jesus with all of our heart. And never just repeat the words or focus on them as a mind practice. They are a heart-mind practice. When we give a Dharma talk, it must always be based on the basis, or at least start from, our compassion for all of humanity, for all of creation, and the desire to quicken and inspire the listener. We should always seek to have a fire in the heart. We should always seek to start with a fire in the heart, a light in the mind, and a tongue for God. And I'd like to conclude with this practice that Henry gave. It was from suggested number 45 on Om Mani Padme Hum. She has, I think there's 2 of them. This is the second one. So please, it's a short little contemplation. It won't take long. Well, first of all, let's say it to kind of get in our head. So let's, I think you all know it well enough. Can we say it together? Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. So when we say the Om, we're going to say Om and then think at the crown of the head, holding our breath for 5 seconds. Om. As we breathe out for 5 seconds, speak or think Mani at the center of the forehead. Then simply sit and be silent and feel it. Breathe up, think Padme, and hold your breath. As we hold our breath, think, the Father in me, he doeth the works. Breathe out. This time, think of the throat chakra as we think hum and breathe up and hold. Then breathe out and think, so be it. And then say aloud with me, Amen, Amen, Amen. So one more time just to end. Om Mani Padme Hum.
Mm. Okay, music. Henry teaches equalized polarization is centralization. The solar plexus chakra is a center for desire. It is the central heart of the desire system and the emotional body. The Lord Buddha came to teach men of the desireless life. For this, he gave the Eightfold Path. By mastering the 8 steps of initiation, one attains the desireless nature. Each petal of the solar plexus chakra, of which there are 8, is a balancing scale for polarization, whereby man's desire is measured. By measuring the 8 steps of initiation, one attains the desireless nature. To dwell upon the 8 steps of initiation through the 3rd chakra path is to be in alignment with the Lord Buddha, who is in command of the 1st heaven. This is a portion where the audience may repeat the movements of the plaisancers. The 8-fold path is right views, right views, right resolutions, right resolutions, right speech, right speech, right acts, right acts, right livelihood, right livelihood, right efforts, right efforts, right thoughts, right thoughts, right state of a peaceful mind, right state of a peaceful mind. This is a portion of the Eightfold Path that is now completed. You may have your seats. Thank you. And the Buddha made these statements. Those who put on the saffron robe without purifying the mind, who lack truthfulness and self-control, are not fit to wear the saffron robe. But those who have purified their minds, who are endowed with truth and self-control, are truly fit to wear the saffron robe. A true follower of the Buddha shines among blind mortals as a fragrant lotus growing in the garbage by the wayside, brings joy to all who pass by. As an irrigator guides water to his fields, as an archer aims an arrow, as a carpenter carves wood, the wise shape their lives. Like the flight of birds in the sky, it is hard to follow the path of the selfless. They have not possessions, but live on alms in a world of freedom. Like the flight of birds in the sky, it is hard to follow their path. With their senses under control, temperate in eating, they know the meaning of freedom. Cut down the whole forest of selfish desires, not just one tree only. Cut down the whole forest, and you will be on your way to liberation. Henry said, Jesus acts as the etheric body of the earth. Buddha acts as the emotional body of the earth. The mental body of the earth, provided by the Christ, opens the way to illumination in consciousness.